Hello, I'm Paul Beckwith. I'm going to introduce you to the joy of eating an orange. Just came out of the fridge, so it feels a bit cold against my palm. It's got this brilliant, beautiful orange color, and the texture, is waxy and soft. And as you bite into it to start peeling it, you get this spray from the orange, which brings you this magnificent smell. And the juices start coming out of it, and you can even start, your mouth can start watering because you're anticipating the first bites of this orange. So basically, nothing really exists to you outside of this orange. This is a really positive experience for you. And as you peel it open, the smell surrounds. I hope you like oranges. And as you first bite into it, the taste of it floods your mouth. You can almost feel like a warmth developing in your brain as the dopamine skyrockets. So what you're doing is you're having a positive experience, having H. Then you're enriching this experience. Okay? The duration, when you're eating it, in this case, the orange is much larger than 5 to 10 seconds. But for any other positive experience, if you enrich it, for at least 5 or 10 seconds within your mind, it starts penetrating deep into your brain. And the next, so that's the E, so we've got HE. Then you absorb the experience. So it's similar to enriching, but you absorb it. You feel like your whole body is being pervaded by this positive experience. And then the last step is L. You can link the experience. So when you're having this positive experience, almost like the ecstasy or orgasmic eating of an orange, if you like, your brain is being flooded with these good feelings. If you think of a negative feeling, a negative experience, then what you can do is you can bring that experience into your mind in parallel with the positive experience, but not as strong. And what will happen is you'll get a rewiring of your brain. The positive experience is like, if your brain's like a garden, the positive experience is the flowers in the garden. The negative experience is the weeds in the garden. So what you're doing is you're pulling the weeds, but you're pulling the weeds and you're replacing them with flowers. Okay, the brain is naturally, the way the brain evolved, it evolved to have a strong negativity bias. All right, you can have 10 great things happen to you during the day and one negative thing happening. And you go home and you might be ruminating about that one negative thing that happened. Right? Those 10 positive things just bounced out of your system like they didn't even exist. The negative thing lingers. Okay, this is the way that the brain is designed. So what I'm talking about is I'm talking about ways to actually use positive experiences. And you have many of those in a day. Somebody smiles at you, you're successful with doing something. If you take that a few extra seconds, 5 to 10 seconds, and enrich the experience, absorb it, go through these steps, you can actually change the hardwiring of your brain. So here's a book I'm talking about. It's by Rick Hanson, a doctor, neuropsychologist, neuroscientist. So it's Hardwiring Happiness, the New Brain Science of Contentment, calm, and confidence. So I highly recommend this book as basically an antidote to climate despair, if you like. If you're a climatologist, or if you're a climate activist, or if you live on the planet Earth and you're concerned about climate change and the politics that is failing to address climate change and the rate of climate change and where it's all heading, it can be very, very overwhelming and put you easily in a negative, even depressive state. So I highly recommend giving this book a try to counteract all of this negativity, to build up your inner strength and give you the emotional resources to counter all of the negative stuff so that you can continue to function, continue to have a happy life, in spite of all of this stuff that is going on. Your well-being becomes unconditional, okay, not dependent on external circumstances. So I'm just going to show you a quick scan of my notes that I've taken, some of the key things in this book, up to page 163. I haven't read past that yet, but I thought, let's do a video on this. So your brain, the 5 cups of tofu that is sitting up in your skull, is an amazing organ, the most amazing organ in the human body, although males might argue the second most important. But it's pre-wired for negativity. Okay, and I'll get into why that is. But the brain can change. It's got neuroplasticity. There's 80 to 100 billion neurons in the brain. The neuron is the basic unit of the nerve cell. Okay, it consists of a long rod called the axon, octopus tentacles coming off called the dendrites. Those dendrites can connect to the axons of many other neurons. There's a little gap called the synapse between the octopus tentacle and the next axon, and the electrical signal goes up the axon, spreads down the dendrites, and crosses to the adjacent axons of other neurons via neurotransmitters, okay, via chemicals that, like for dopamine, the serotonin, for example, that carry the signal. There's trillions of support cells, so that's about 10 support cells for each neuron. These neurons are all meshed together in a network, one neuron connecting to many neurons. There's a threshold, so when the electrical signal is above a certain level, then boom, the signal will go to the next neuron. If it's below that threshold, it won't. So the neuron can either fire or not fire. These connections, or synapses, there's a 500 quadrillion of them. That quadrillion is 10 to the 15th power. Okay, so how is the brain built up? How did the brain evolve? Because that's very important in terms of the thinking. So you have the spinal cord, and then you have that connects to the brain stem, the lower part of the brain. Then that connects to the subcortex, and then to even up higher to the cortex. So as you go higher up, you go to more and more recent time in the evolution of the brain. So the spinal cord up into the brain cell, that's the lizard brain. That's responsible for fear and flight response, or freeze. The lizard, you have this, it is basically avoidance. You want to avoid danger. You want to have safety. You want to have peace, if you like, serenity, okay, avoiding danger. So that's the basic response of the brainstem of the lizard brain is for avoidance of danger. And then as you go up higher into the subcortex, that's the mammalian part of the brain, the mouse brain, if you like. This is the part that is responsible for for seeking out rewards, approaching food, approaching shelter, seeking out rewards, satisfaction and contentment part of the brain. And then you go up to the highest part of the brain, the cortex. This is the primate or human part of the brain. It's all about connection. It's all about socialization. It's about language. It's about love. It's about responding to a group or a tribe. So the brainstem, subcortex, cortex, it's like 3 operating systems, if you like. And each of these operating systems can be in one of 2 states, the green state or the red state. The green state is the responsive state. It's a resting state. It involves the parasympathetic part of the nervous system. The red state is the reactive state or the sympathetic state. It's the red, flashing red, danger, 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 Will Rogers. Okay, so the amygdala and the hypothalamus, they're parts of the brain. They're just in the lower part of the brain. So you see danger. The amygdala like flashes. Okay, it becomes very active. It tells the hypothalamus there's danger. You get these stress hormones, norepinephrine, cortisol, being fired out. Okay, these go to a part of the brain called the hippocampus, where many brain cells are born, and it can tell them to stop producing new brain cells. It can actually kill brain cells, and if it's activated too much, it can shrink the hippocampus. Okay, so basically the brain, we still have all these elements of the brain in us, so we have to figure out, the good news is we can actually change the neural pathway, the networks of neurons, to make our brain more resilient. Okay, like I said, the brain is like Velcro for negative thoughts. They just stick up there. It's like Teflon for positive thoughts. But if you actually do this training, this HEAL training, then you can actually rewire the neural connections in your brain over time. It doesn't happen overnight. 5 to 10 events per day, more the better. You're focusing on the positive thought, 5 to 10 seconds, longer is better. So you have the positive experience. Then you enrich it. Well, how do you enrich it? It's enriched by the duration. The longer, the better. Think of this pathway, a whole bunch of neurons in a network firing for this positive thought. Okay? So the duration, neurons that fire together, wire together. So they're firing, the longer they're firing for, the more that thought gets wired into your brain. It actually changes your brain. Synapses can grow, new neurons can be involved. The intensity of the thought is also very important, of course, as is the multimodality. If it's involving the sense of smell and touch and color, sight, and if you hear the a bit of crackling or the peel being pulled back, all of these different elements, taste, can increase the enrichment. And then it's almost like, you feel a pervasive goodness of the brain being filled, with something that's positive. The novelty is also important, and the personal relevance. And then when you've got all of these things firing and you just feel great with this positive thought, you can link it to a negative thought. You can bring up a negative thought, something that's been reoccurring, some repetitive thought that comes up, and basically what you're doing is you're overwhelming that negative thought with the positive thought. It's important to keep the positive up. So you get it really going first when you start bringing up the negative. If the negative starts taking over, then drop it, go back to the positive, and you can actually rewire the brain circuitry and allow yourself to you can have much more peace and contentment and love and goodness in your life in spite of all of these negative climate things. So thank you for listening.